as Baring Breivik has said, there are only two just and fair outcomes of this trial: acquittal or capital punishment. I consider 21 years of prison as a pathetic punishment. And one of the original judges assigned his trial agreed with him. Thomas Indrebo was dismissed on day one when it came to light that he had tweeted that the death penalty is the only just sentence in this case. But 21 years imprisonment is the maximum sentence available in Norway since the death penalty for war crimes and treason was abolished in 1979. So do some crimes deserve the death penalty? Michael, you work with the Innocence network, those who believe are in prison and should not have been in prison in the first place. You know, some crimes are just so beyond the pale, you know, whether it be a mass killer like Breivik, a child killer like Robert Black, or somebody like Peter Hitchens. Does it not, do those cases not test your liberal principles?
No, I think that...
not at all?
No, clearly, I think they're very emotive cases. I'm a parent myself, and, you know, you often think that if somebody harmed one of your own children, you know, you often think what you might do to protect your loved one or your wife or whatever.
Or to seek vengeance?
Yeah, I mean, that's the society we're brought up in. That's how we think that we can actually right that wrong. But I think that, you know, we've got to decide about what our values are as a kind of people, what our identity is. And I think that we abolished capital punishment in this country in the 1960s because the British public really couldn't stomach the reality that an innocent person had been executed wrongly. And I think that, you know, once you start to go down a path of saying that we want to reintroduce capital punishment even into conversations in this country, what you're going to do is you are inevitably going to be executing innocent people. And I think that the other aspect of it
is... one innocent life lost is not worth it for the rest?
Well,
for the guilty.
People on the other side of this debate clearly think it is, because before we came on air, we were discussing over coffee, and people there think that, you know, we have a system, it's going to make mistakes, some innocent people are going to be killed, and that's okay. But it's not them, it's not their lives, and I think that, you know, judicial errors don't trouble people in the judiciary.
Is it okay if an innocent life is lost along the way, Peter Hitchens?
No, of course it's not okay, and nobody says that it is okay, and every conceivable step should be taken to ensure that no innocent life is lost. But I think only a total pacifist can really honestly use that as an argument against the policy of the death penalty. If you've otherwise accepted the death penalty is a good thing. We, in many cases, there will be people in this room who supported, for instance, the bombing of Serbia during the Kosovo episode, and almost anybody in this room will believe that our conduct of the Second World War was correct. Now, in both cases, we pursued what we believed to be a good end. We can argue about that another time, and accepted that in the course of that, innocent people would inevitably die. And therefore, if you are going to say that you cannot accept even the faintest possibility of an innocent death as a reason for not having the death penalty, then you have to declare that you're a pacifist. You wouldn't have fought the Second World War, and there's a lot of other things you wouldn't have.
It's
not a very good...
That's not correct.
It's not a very good argument.
No, it's not correct.
Actually.
What you're doing is you're mixing
it.
different things together and trying to come out with a conclusion. I don't actually agree that we should go to these wars, but that's a separate matter. What we're talking about... Excuse me.
You missed my point already, because I have to...
What I'm talking about...
This argument is had so many times, and it so often dries into the sand because people don't listen to what the other one is saying.
What we're talking about is a judicial system...
Let him just set the point out, then I come back to you.
If you're going to argue that the death penalty is never justified at all, then that's one thing, then you can argue that. But if you're going to argue that the danger of innocent life being lost is the all-consuming veto over the death penalty, then that's a different question. Many people, particularly Michael Howard, the former Home Secretary, would say, I support the death penalty, but I'm against it because of the problem of innocent life. And what I'm pointing out is that as an argument means that you're therefore also unable to adopt all kinds of other policies which most people would see as desirable. So, but you can't, if that's your argument, then you have to abandon a lot of other things.
But Mark Mullins as well. You're a criminal barrister, but you're both Christians. Surely the death penalty is vetoed by the fact that you're holding out the possibility of redemption for somebody, for a soul ultimately to be saved. Well, surely that's the point. That should argue against your position.
No, it doesn't. It's the opposite. It concentrates the mind, because if you know you are going to face a higher court, and I think we have to remember that originally the basis for the death penalty came Noah's Ark. I guess some people like James won't accept Noah's Ark, but when he came out, we still have a rainbow, of course. When Noah came out of the ark, he was told, but God said, if any man sheds blood, then by man shall his blood be shed, because man is made in the image of God.
But there are 35 things in the Old Testament that warrant the death penalty, including being rude to your parents.
That's a Mosaic law.
Let's just say with Mark, in a minute.
That's a Mosaic law which is separate, which was set aside by Christ in his death on the cross for us.
Let me ask you something.
We now have a church and not a nation.
It's in the Bible, it's in Genesis, as you say, any man who sheds the blood of another. Let me ask you something then. If you believe that Jesus would have supported the death penalty, do you think that Jesus Christ, who preached love and forgiveness, would have been capable, yes or no, of pulling the lever?
Jesus Christ will judge us all at the end of our lives.
Would Jesus Christ have been capable of pulling the lever?
Jesus Christ didn't come as our judge. He came as our Saviour.
But if he supported the death penalty...
Nicky, I do understand, but he suffered the death penalty for us.
When he came in the New Testament, he said, I've done away with an eye for an eye, he said. Love your enemies, he said.
He also said he
came as a Christian,
Through the Bible for your own gain.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Tell you what the Bible says.
Well, they're
Preaching the Old Testament.
But
The Old
what about
Testament
the
the New Testament is love.
Yeah.
Jesus said, do not judge or you will be judged.
Amen.
Wait, no, let's stay, Bruce, we'll be with you in a minute. We'll be back with Peter, but we're going to hear, since they've made this intervention, Peter, you must hear their story, Peter. You must hear their story.
Listen.
You lost your son, Chris, 11 years ago.
Our son was murdered by a gang 11 years ago.
I'm sorry.
When we went to court, we got lies, total lies from them. Okay? I was really raging and I was angry and I wanted to go and kill him. A year after that, I decided to move on and forgive them because it was destroying me. After that, we decided we wanted to meet them and get the truth. We met one of the boys who killed our son last year. Now, if he'd had the death penalty, we wouldn't have met him, and I wouldn't have heard him say,
sorry,
I was a coward and I killed your son. And I went on a restorative justice course. And suddenly I realised, and I saw Christopher for the first time, I realised who my victim was and I admitted it. We wouldn't have got all that if it had the death penalty. If you bring the death penalty in, people like us will get forgotten. We're victims and you're not putting us first. You're not asking us.
In court, the victims don't get a voice. For the past 8 years now, we've been going around prisons and schools teaching restorative justice. We have seen a lot of people change. A lot of prisoners inside and out.
What did it mean to you looking into the eyes of one of the boys who killed Christopher and for him to address you? What did it mean to you?
It meant an end.
It meant a move on.
We were able to move on.
Peter, please in a minute. I'm so sorry to have interrupted you earlier.
No. I have a very simple point here. You can't apologise to a dead person. You can apologise to the relatives of a dead person. You can apologise. I can't. Not speaking for you. I'm not attempting. I didn't interrupt you. Please don't interrupt me. I'm not attempting to speak for you. I'm attempting to speak for a law-governed society in which the taking of life is the single most serious crime and against which there must be some defence. If people can take another life and get away with it, as they do in our society, increasingly they're not even charged with murder, they're charged with manslaughter and convicted of it, and they're out on the streets within a few years. If that happens, I will tell you what will happen, there will be more murder.
So, okay, if you kill the boy who killed my son, what about his family? Do you want to make...
What about whose family?
The boys.
What about the boys' family, the boys who killed our son? Do you want to make them victims too? Do you want them to suffer the way we... Is that
I want this to be justice. I want there to be justice.
Justice is served by the law.
I want there to be protection for innocent life in our society.
We'll speak to Michael, I'll have you on in a minute, but James is desperate to come in, and then you're next, if I can form an orderly queue.
I think Peter is doing our work for us. But first of all, he says you can't apologise to a dead person, and yet at the same time contends that incidences of killing innocent people by accident shouldn't be a fly in the ointment of his support for state-sanctioned murder. You can't say sorry to someone who's been executed despite being innocent, Peter. And your canard, hang on, you're very fond of reminding other people.
Speak as if not to
interrupt. Let him finish, Peter.
Concerned about innocent
Let
death.
him finish, Peter,
On the
please.
contrary, I wish to prevent it.
Okay, James.
And secondly, the parallel with war. I think any court of law, any justice system I'm aware of, recognises self-defence. So for you to equate state-sanctioned murder of someone who's already been captured and convicted with a nation seeking to repel Nazism or combat the excesses of Slobodan Milosevic is an argument so fatuous that, frankly, it's beneath you.
Well, listen to Michael's story as well.
Doesn't treat it with any care in that case, is all I can say.
Michael, you were in prison for a murder. You didn't do it. You were there for 11 years.
I did 11 years and 43 days because dishonest people, including people in authority, decided they were going to use me as a scapegoat for a crime I didn't do. Now, Mr. Flynn knows about my case and whatever, and I would have been executed if you would have had your way. The Birmingham 6, the Guildford 4. Where's it going to stop?
All right, may I answer that in that case? The abolition of the death penalty has cheapened the trial of murder in this country.
How?
Well, how? Very simply. Have you ever sat on a jury? How much more seriously do you take a trial where your verdict can send someone to the gallows than when not? How much more serious? Look, the penalty for murder in this country is now a number of years in prison, often quite a brief number of years in prison.
That's not correct.
The procedures of our courts.
I want to hear from Bruce Anderson.
I
want to hear from Bruce Anderson.
Well, 2 points. First of all,
you gentlemen over there,
I find the parents of the murdered boy profoundly moving, but you can't determine the criminal law. About 1,000 years ago, it was decided in England that crime was not an offence against the victim, it was an offence against the king's peace. And the king, and I don't think you should be entitled to demand a reprieve for your son's killers any more than you should be entitled to demand the death penalty. There is an argument that if we hanged a few of the worst murderers every year, where there would be no doubt, and I'm sure it probably wouldn't have included a few of the worst murderers every year, the public demand for vengeance, which I think is not an unhealthy demand, would be satiated, and actually we could be far more merciful to the generality of murderers. A lot of boys of 20 now are being sentenced to serve.
Well, listen, Bruce, in America, you're 3 times more likely to be on death row if you're black. What does that tell you?
It may tell you that there's either blacks commit more crimes or there's something wrong with the American system of justice. But it's not an analogy here. It's not an analogy here. The fact is, our system is a much more civilised one, I think.
Is it a more civilised system, Michael?
It's not, and I think that's when I come in. When you look at criminal justice and the victims of wrongful convictions, what you see is the same kind of demographic. You see working class people, minority people. I want to say one final thing, though, to this. You talk about people getting short prison sentences. Prisoners who maintain innocence in this country may never get out. We don't officially have life without parole, but the cases that we work on with the Innocence projects in this country, these are people who were given an 8, 9, 10-year tariff. They're still in prison after 40 years because they won't admit to a crime they said they didn't do. Because you say that you care about innocent people in prison, but what do you actually do? You have to be alive to the reality of the numbers of innocent people in prison before you can even do anything about it. You're heartless and you're immoral.
I make no personal attack upon you, and I think you should probably do the same for me. I accept that your motives are good. You should accept that mine are as well.
No.
What I am
you don't accept his motives are good.
Well, because he's paying lip service. He's saying what he knows he has to say. But actually, when you
he believes it.
He doesn't believe it because he's not prepared to do anything about it. To blandly say I care about the innocent, but then just say we should have the death penalty, it doesn't. The two things don't fit together.
Listen, in any case, you obviously have little idea what I think, and haven't read my book on the subject. So you're just shooting off arrows in the dark against what I think without knowing. Don't do it. I'm addressing what you say. The simple point here is this:
make a simple point quickly,
in our society,
since
the death penalty was abolished, the amount of violence capable of killing people in this country has increased enormously. The only reason our murder rate is not immensely higher is because at the same time, the quality of medical treatment, particularly of trauma surgery, has increased immensely. The number of attempted murders and assaults with intent to kill in this country is enormous each year.
Okay,
if we didn't have superb trauma treatment, our murder rate would be at the level of the United States.
Thank you. Hands up in the audience. Hands up in the audience. You first, sir, in the blazer. Over here.
Surely the problem with the death penalty, I mean, we've talked a lot about the practical problems, but we haven't really talked about the moral question. Do we think that people who commit terrible crimes should be punished? And if we do, then don't we think that murder is a peculiarly terrible crime and it should be punished in a particular way? Because it seems that the whole idea that people are responsible for what they do has completely disappeared, and what has been replaced is that criminals are actually victims themselves. That's why we don't have the death penalty, and that's why criminals are treated so soft in the first place.
Okay, and beside you.
I confess to being, in Peter's words, a total pacifist. But as far as I'm concerned, the death penalty is not justice, but revenge. We as a moral society should not have to resort to something that a criminal would do in order to stop a criminal.
Why don't we do more about why they do these things? Why don't we deal with that and talk more about that? Why they went and killed my son, rather than after?
Did those boys say why they killed Chris?
Yeah. He said he was a 15-year-old coward on drinks and drugs.
They were high on drink and they were high on drugs.
But is it worth, let's take it into the mass killing, is it worth spending time to work out why Breivik did it or not? Is it worth spending time to...
It's worth spending all time.
Is it? He's a very sick man and needs help.
But can I just say...
Breivik needs help.
He's a very sick man. He was playing games. He said that he played video games and taught himself how to do this. What does that say about our sick society, about games? The boys that killed my son said that. They said that in court to the QC.
Bruce Anderson,
we were playing games.
Bruce Anderson.
I find the smug expression on Breivik's face intolerable. I would like to adjust it, say, by 100 lashes or a few goes on the waterboard. There is an argument for sentencing him to death and keeping him alive for the psychiatrists and people to examine him and come to all the conclusions and only then hanging him. But there was...
But what if, Mark Mullins, what if somewhere down the line Breivik turns around and says, do you know what, I'm trying to talk your language here, Mark. What if he says, do you know what, I've got all this wrong, Christ is the answer, I want to come to Christ. Well, you're cutting off that possibility, aren't you?
No, well, first of all, I'm very glad that we all recognise he's not a Christian, because some people have claimed he's a fundamentalist.
But one day, do you not hold out hope that one day he will find God?
As I said to you, it's amazing how the death penalty concentrates the mind. If you know,
you're not answering the question, Mark.
No, I am. I'm saying that that's his time to repent. Because if you leave it, if sentence against a matter is prolonged, then people just harden their heart against the consequences.
But there are many people who convert in prison.
Well, somebody who knows they're going to face a death penalty has their opportunity to repent then, and many take it. And they accept, as a thief on the cross, that they deserve what they're getting. But they go to heaven at the end of it because they've repented.
They go to heaven because they've repented.
Because they repented of their sins and trusted in Jesus Christ. And
you can't
that's
be a
far more
Christian
important.
unless Mark says you are, and you can't have a view on the death penalty unless you've read Peter's book. It's an astonishing... May I very briefly say, the Christian faith in which I'm raising my children is represented by Ray and Vihir, Mark, not by you.
All right, listen, what about David from the Islamic Party of Britain? Do you support the death penalty?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, for whom? For what?
Well, for the right reasons. I think it should be down to the families to decide. There are rules, and of course, as I mentioned earlier before I was about the Ten Commandments being overtaken by rules and regulations that have failed us. But it shouldn't be eliminated. It should be allowed where conditions. I remember the Moors murderers, and I met people who have lived with that, and
likewise, yeah,
absolutely
terrible,
awful,
terrible.
So,
but then they wouldn't have found out where that body was buried had she not been kept alive. Yeah. So
that's true. But
you know, there was information that came later on, wasn't there?
There is true, but I think that the fact that Hindley, I mean Lord Longford, he was wanting her released, he should have taken her to his house.
Do you think Breivik should die?
I think so, yes.
So, if one of the 7/7 bombers had been caught, should he have been put to death?
Well, if we got the right 7/7 bombers, yes, we would. But the thing is that we know that 9/11 and 7/7 was not done by the guys that were in the dock of Blair.
Oh, I see. I see. We know that, do we? James, do you want to just...
You don't know it.
I can't argue with the man with the crystal ball. I'm terribly sorry. I have nothing to add.
Right.
We go around the country We go in schools and youth clubs and we teach the kids. We work with a lot of youth people, like I mentioned, one Streets of Growth. We teach the kids to put down the knife, put down the gun, stop revenge.
And stop revenge.
And all we're talking about in here at the moment is revenge. So what are we teaching our young children out there?
No, that's a bit
strange, isn't it?
We're talking about justice.
We're talking about an eye for an eye.
No, justice. No, sir. Justice is about the government.
So should he be dead?
Yes. I would be dead.
Should he be
dead?
An innocent man should not be dead, no.
But I would have been dead. If it was down to the victim's family, like this gentleman said here, they wanted me dead. As soon as you are convicted...
Well, address him on that. I know.
But you can never justify the death penalty. We're supposed to live in a civilised society. You're no better than the person who actually committed the killing. Because you want to kill somebody. You can't justify it. And what about the youngsters of today? What kind of message is that sending? It's okay to kill people if they're in government and they can turn around and say, well, we're the government, you killed him, so I'm going to kill you. So that makes it right, does it? No, it doesn't. But that's what you're saying.
You said that. You caricature your opponent.
No, I'm not at all. You cannot justify the death penalty. Innocent people have already been murdered by the state. Timothy Evans, Jamie Bamber's still in prison after 25 years trying to clear his name. You've got Ray Gilbert, he's done 30 years, he's still trying to clear his name.
Just had another appeal turned down.
Yeah.
Do you know there are people in prison who did do these crimes?
Oh yeah, of course. I know a few of them who said that innocent. Believe me,
you did, but there's some guilty people along the way.
Oh yeah, no, there are guilty people in society. And there are guilty people in society because they escape justice because innocent people are serving their sentences.
Last word.
We don't live in a perfect society.
We
don't. I can very easily sit here and do as your side has done and make an emotional case, citing again and again. Wait a minute. Citing again and again the horrible things which happen to people who are murdered. I could do that, but I'm not doing it because I think there is a rational case for the death penalty which you need to consider.
No, there's not.
Okay, Ray, last word to you.
It's in the face. Look me in the eye and tell me it's rational.
Emotional?
No, it's not.
No?
It's not emotional. I needed answers.
We both did.
We both needed answers.
Do you respect people who don't take your course, who say, actually, I would like the person who killed my little girl, my little boy?
I feel terribly sad.
Do you respect their position?
Yes.
I understand where they're coming from. Of course, I've been there.
Yeah.
But I've chosen to move on, and you can choose to move on, and there are many like us who know that now and are moving on, and we want to help other people do that. It takes
time, yeah.
But meeting the boys who killed our son was part of that. Was part of getting the answers.
And that process goes on, doesn't it?
The process goes on.
There's just one more thing. Everybody keeps quoting the Old Testament. You know, Gandhi said, if we start looking for an eye, 3/4 of the world would be blind.
Yes.
Thank you both very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's for your contribution. Thank you. Now, if you'd like to have your say about that debate, log on to bbc.co.uk/thebigquestions. You'll find links to places to continue the discussion online.